Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today I am your host, and I'm sitting down with our resident legal expert to unpack something that, well, honestly, it feels completely backward when you first hear it.
Yeah, it really does. Glad to be here, by the way.
Thanks for being here. So, for everyone listening, we are looking at some heavy-hitting sources today,
Yeah.
mostly legal masterclass materials and some really dense bar exam prep guides.
The stuff that keeps law students awake at night.
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore this invisible boundary line in the legal world, the line between tort law, which is accidents and negligence, and contract law.
Right, the world of agreements and money.
Yeah. But to really grasp why this boundary exists and why you should care, I want to start with this scenario. Imagine a Tuesday afternoon, busy downtown district. You've got a truck driver. Let's call him Dave.
Okay, Dave.
So Dave is driving his rig, and he is distracted. Maybe he's texting, or maybe dropped his coffee, whatever. He drifts out of his lane and just slams right into a power station.
Oh, man. So a classic chaotic start.
Total chaos. Massive crash. Now, Dave is fine, but the grid goes down. 6 square blocks, totally dark. But I want to zoom in on the building right next door to that power station.
Okay.
It's a high-end steakhouse. Now, the truck didn't hit them. There's not a single scratch on their building.
Yeah.
But because the power dies, all their walk-in freezers just stop humming.
And that is a ticking clock for a steakhouse.
A very fast ticking clock. They've
Yeah.
got $10,000 worth of dry-aged Wagyu beef, expensive truffles, all of it just spoiling in the heat. Plus, they have to cancel 2 full days of reservations.
Yeah, that's a massive hit. They lose a fortune in inventory and lost revenue.
Right. So the question on the table for you, the listener, is simple. Who pays for the beef?
Well, I think logic and probably anyone you ask on the street says Dave pays.
Because he was negligent.
Right. He was clearly negligent. The damage to the restaurant was a direct result of his bad driving. But we are diving into a stack of legal theory today that basically says, not so
It's
fast.
crazy.
It really is one of the most counterintuitive and frankly frustrating areas of the law for business owners. You'd assume that if you break it, you buy it. But the legal system has drawn this very specific, invisible line in the sand.
And that's what the sources call the economic loss rule.
Exactly. The economic loss rule.
So we're going to unpack why the law essentially tells that restaurant owner tough luck when it comes to their wallet, even when the negligence is totally obvious.
And then later we're going to pivot to the one massive exception to this rule,
Right, the exception where words instead of trucks cause the damage.
where professionals like accountants and appraisers find themselves in the crosshairs. It's a fascinating journey from the physical world of tort law to the paper world of contract law.
So let's get back to that rotting beef. Dave was negligent. In almost every other legal context, negligence hangs on one magic word, right?
Foreseeability.
Foreseeability. Like if I swing a baseball bat in a crowded room, it is totally foreseeable I'm going to hit someone.
Right, so you're liable. That is the absolute bedrock of tort law.
And surely, I mean, it is foreseeable that if you knock out a power station in a commercial district, the businesses around it are going to lose money.
Totally foreseeable.
So why on earth doesn't the restaurant win the lawsuit against Dave?
Because in this specific corner of the law, foreseeability is a trap. The sources we're looking at are very specific about this. If you are dealing with pure economic loss,
Meaning no one died, no property was physically touched.
exactly, the restaurant wasn't hit. If it's just pure economic loss, foreseeability is not enough.
That just feels incredibly arbitrary to the victim. Like the loss is real, the money is actually gone from their bank account. Why does the law care if the truck hit the wall or just the power line?
I know, it feels totally arbitrary. But you really have to zoom out and look at it from the court's perspective. The sources outline 3 major policy reasons why they just slam the door on these cases.
Okay, let's go through them.
The biggest one is what legal scholars call the floodgates argument, or indeterminate plaintiffs.
Meaning they basically don't know where the line of lawsuits would actually end.
Yes, exactly. Stick with your power outage example. If the restaurant can sue Dave for lost profits, who else gets to sue?
Well, I guess presumably the delivery driver who showed up to the restaurant and lost a commission because they were closed.
Okay, so he sues. What about the supplier who has a whole warehouse full of vegetables they can't sell to the restaurant that week?
Oh, I see where this is going. What about the guy charging his electric car down the street who misses a job interview because the charger died?
Right. Or the day trader who couldn't execute a trade because his Wi-Fi went out.
Right.
Precisely. It's the butterfly effect.
Right.
One negligent act ripples through the entire local economy. If the court says, yes, purely financial loss is recoverable, then Dave isn't just being sued by the power company.
He's getting sued by 5,000 people he's never even met.
And that leads to the second fear the sources mention, which is indeterminate damages.
Indeterminate damages. So how do you even calculate that?
Exactly. In a physical accident, say you get a broken arm, we have medical bills, we can count that. It's finite. But economic ripples are incredibly messy. How do you prove the delivery driver definitely would have gotten that commission? How do you prove the stock trader would have made money on that specific trade?
It just becomes a speculative nightmare for the courts.
A total nightmare. So to prevent the courts from being completely clogged with millions of I lost money lawsuits, they just draw a hard line.
Physical harm or property damage? Come on in. Just a thinner wallet. Stay out.
That is the harsh reality. It's what the sources call the crushing liability concern. If that truck driver, or let's be real, his insurance company was responsible for every single dollar lost by every person affected by the blackout.
A simple fender bender becomes a billion-dollar liability.
Yes. And no insurance company could ever price that risk. Your car insurance premiums would be $10,000 a month.
So driving would become impossible. Construction would become impossible.
Exactly. So the economic loss rule is basically a dam. It holds back the flood of financial liability so society can actually function, even if it leaves a few innocent restaurant owners drowning on the other side.
So the courts are essentially saying to you, we will protect your body and we will protect your property, but we will not protect your bank account from the general friction of the world.
Yep. For that, you need a contract or an insurance policy.
Get insurance is the court's answer to pure economic loss.
That is the perfect summary.
Okay, so that's the truck scenario. That's a stranger causing an accident out in the world. But the materials we looked at highlight another area where this rule gets really tricky, and that's when you actually buy something that breaks.
Yes. The product damages only itself dilemma. This is a huge favorite on the bar exam because it traps so many students.
I found this part fascinating because it sits right on the border of tort and contract law.
It really does.
Let's use a hypothetical from the sources. Let's say I own a factory, and I buy a massive, extremely expensive commercial boiler to run my assembly line.
Okay.
3 months later, the thing just dies. It's a lemon.
Standard defect.
Right. It stops working. My factory shuts down entirely. I am losing $50,000 a day in production while we try to fix this thing. So I want to sue the manufacturer for negligence. I want to say, you built a bad boiler, you were sloppy, pay me for my lost production.
And based on the economic loss rule, you are going to lose that lawsuit.
But why? I mean, they were negligent. They built a defective machine.
Because the law looks at that and says, this isn't a safety issue. This is a commercial issue. You paid for a boiler that works. You got one that doesn't.
Right.
The legal term the sources use is a disappointed commercial expectation.
Which sounds like a very polite legal way of saying you got ripped off.
It is. But because it's a commercial transaction, the law expects you to handle that in the contract. Did you get a warranty? Did you negotiate a service agreement?
So if you didn't, tort law, the law of accidents isn't going to swoop in and save you.
Exactly. It effectively forces businesses to read the fine print. You can't rely on general negligence law to fix a bad purchase. If the product just fails to do its job, that's a contract dispute. But
there is a twist.
There is always a twist in law. The boiler hypothetical in the notes has a scenario B.
Right. So scenario B, same boiler, same defect. But this time, it doesn't just quietly stop working. It overheats, explodes, and flies through the roof, burning down the factory floor.
Now the game has changed completely.
Right, because now I can sue for negligence.
Yes, because now you have property damage to other property. The boiler damaged the floor and the roof. The moment the damage crosses the line from the product itself to the outside world, tort law kicks down the door and says, okay, now we care. Now this is dangerous.
It creates this weird, almost perverse incentive, though, doesn't it? Like, if I'm a factory owner and I see my machine starting to smoke and rattle, part of me should almost hope it blows a hole in the wall.
I mean, I wouldn't advise saying that in court, but legally, you're not wrong. If it just dies, you're out of pocket and stuck with whatever warranty you signed. If it destroys the wall, you can sue for the wall, the boiler, and potentially the lost profits as consequential damages.
So the mental shortcut is, if it stays inside the box, it's contract law. If it breaks out of the box, it's tort law.
That's a really great way to visualize it. Tort law is for safety. Contract law is for commerce. Boiler just dies. Commerce problem. Boiler explodes. Safety problem.
Okay, so we have established the general rule. No recovery for pure money loss in negligence. But this deep dive wouldn't be complete without the exception. And the sources point to a massive one that affects a lot of white-collar professionals.
Ah, yes. The information professionals.
This is where the sources completely shift gears. We stop talking about truck drivers and boiler manufacturers, and we start talking about accountants, appraisers, surveyors, engineers.
People who don't sell widgets, they sell words.
Exactly.
Think about it. If you hire an auditor or a land surveyor, their product is information. If that information is wrong, nothing physically explodes. You don't get a broken arm, you just lose money.
So if the economic loss rule applied strictly to them, like if we applied the boiler rule to an accountant, you could essentially never sue an accountant for doing a bad job.
Precisely. Their mistakes almost always result in pure financial loss. If I do your taxes wrong, you lose money to the IRS. You don't get a bruise.
Right.
So if the courts stuck to the strict rule, these professionals would just be totally immune to negligence claims.
And that clearly wouldn't work. We need to be able to hold experts accountable.
Right. So the courts carved out this specific niche called negligent misrepresentation. It allows you to actually sue for money lost due to bad advice.
But it's not a free-for-all. I mean, I can't sue my brother-in-law for a bad stock tip he gave me at a barbecue, right?
Yeah.
Even if he acted like an expert.
No, thankfully for your brother-in-law, the sources list specific elements you have to prove. First, the information has to be supplied in a business or professional context. Social advice just doesn't count.
Okay, so money or business has to be involved.
Second, you have to prove justifiable reliance, meaning it was reasonable for you to listen to them and you actually acted on that advice. You didn't just hear it and ignore it.
And third, and I think this is the big one from the text, is the intent. We aren't talking about lying here, right? Because if they lie, that feels like a totally different crime.
Correct. That's a crucial distinction. If an appraiser lies about the value of a house to help a buddy close a real estate deal, that is fraud. Fraud is a whole different animal. You can always sue for fraud.
Right, but here we are talking about an oops.
We are talking about being sloppy. I didn't check the comparable sales from last year, or I added an extra zero by mistake. It's a failure to exercise reasonable care.
Okay, so if an information professional is sloppy and I lose money, I can sue. But wait, this brings us back to that floodgates fear we talked about earlier with Dave the truck driver.
Yep, here it comes.
If an accountant messes up a company's audit report and that report goes public, thousands of people might read it.
Right. Think about a publicly traded company.
Thousands of investors might buy the stock based on that exact report. If the stock tanks because the report was fundamentally wrong, can all 10,000 of those investors sue the one accountant?
Well, logic would say, if we follow the standard foreseeability rule, yes. The accountant knows investors read reports. It is totally foreseeable.
But if 10,000 people sue, the accountant is bankrupt immediately.
And that is exactly where the law slams the brakes again. Even in this big exception, they build a wall. This is the scope limit, or the ultra-mares doctrine, depending on which jurisdiction you're in.
Okay, the scope limit.
The sources are very clear here. Liability is limited to a known or intended group for a specific transaction.
Let's break that down with the accountant hypothetical from the text, because I think this is the trap that catches most people on exams, and honestly, it just feels a little unfair in real life.
Let's do it. Scenario A. You have a company, Company X. They hire an accountant to prepare a financial report specifically because they want to get a loan from B. The accountant knows this. They know Bank B is waiting for this exact piece of paper to approve the loan.
Okay, so the accountant messes up. They are sloppy. The report says Company X is wealthy. Actually, they are broke. Bank B gives the loan based on the report and loses millions. Can Bank B sue?
Yes. They are the intended audience. The accountant effectively handed them the information. The duty of care extends to Bank B because the accountant knew exactly who was relying on it.
Now, scenario B, same accountant, same sloppy report, but months later, a random investor, let's call him Steve, finds this report on the internet.
Poor Steve.
Right, poor Steve thinks, wow, good numbers. He buys the stock and he loses his shirt when the truth comes out. Can Steve sue the accountant?
Steve is completely out of luck. He cannot sue.
Even though the mistake is identical. Even though the negligence is the exact same.
Even though the negligence is identical, because the accountant did not prepare that report for Steve or for the general stock market. They prepared it for the bank loan. If the law allowed Steve to sue, we are right back to indeterminate plaintiffs. An accountant would be liable to the entire world for one typo.
Wow. That really highlights how the law protects the professional more than the public in some ways. It essentially forces the public to do their own due diligence.
It does. It forces you to ask, was this report written for me? If the answer is no, you are relying on it at your own risk. The law says the accountant's liability isn't infinite.
I want to circle back to the distinction you made a minute ago between this negligence and fraud, because I feel like that's the emotional safety valve here. If the accountant was just sloppy, Steve the investor loses. But what if the accountant cooked the books on purpose?
If there's intent to deceive or even a reckless disregard for the truth, then the protective walls crumble. Fraud is an intentional tort.
So if the accountant knew the numbers were fake,
Then Steve absolutely can sue. The courts have zero tolerance for liars. If you commit fraud, you are generally liable to anyone who you reasonably could have expected to rely on that lie. The limited class rule just evaporates.
so negligence is a small circle of liability, fraud is a massive circle.
Exactly, because we as a society want to punish liars much more than we want to punish clumsy people.
That makes a lot of sense. So, to summarize the mental checklist for our listeners today, if you lose money because of someone else's mistake, step 1, was anything physically broken?
If yes, you're in tort land, you're good. Sim for negligence.
If it's just money.
Yeah.
Step 2, was it a product you bought?
If yes, check your warranty. You likely cannot sue for negligence because of the economic loss rule.
And step 3, was it bad advice from a professional?
If yes, you can sue, but only if they knew they were giving that advice to you specifically for a specific purpose.
It's a minefield.
It's a labyrinth, but it's designed to keep the economy moving without bankrupting everyone who makes a simple mistake.
It really makes you think about the modern economy, though. I mean, we spent the first half of this deep dive talking about trucks and boilers, physical things, but we live in an information economy now.
Yeah, that is the big question mark hanging over this entire subject. The law is notoriously slow to adapt.
Right, like data is the new oil. If a cloud server goes down and just deletes a startup's entire code base, or if a software bug wipes out a financial database, that startup is dead. That is pure economic loss. But under the current rules, is that just a disappointed commercial expectation?
Currently, likely yes. It's treated exactly like the broken boiler. The court would say you should have had a better contract with the cloud provider. But as intangible assets become more valuable than physical ones, you really have to wonder if these old distinctions between physical harm and financial harm will start to feel obsolete.
Because if a software bug crashes the stock market, sticking to the economic loss rule might protect the software company, but it might destroy everyone else.
It's a huge tension that legal scholars are debating right now. But for the moment, the rule stands. The courts refuse to become the insurer for every bad deal or every computer glitch.
So the ultimate takeaway for the listener:
Don't rely on advice that wasn't paid for by you or specifically addressed to you. And if you run a business, never assume the law will save you if your vendors mess up.
read the contract.
Read the contract. Negotiate the warranty. Because that piece of paper is literally the only safety net you have when there's no physical damage.
Read the contract. The 3 most boring yet most expensive words in the English language.
Unfortunately true. But they really might save your business one day.
Well, that is a wrap on the economic loss rule. A huge thank you to our expert for guiding us through the invisible boundaries of the law today.
Always a pleasure to be here.
And to you, listening next time you see a hot stock tip on a forum, remember, if it turns out to be garbage, the only person you can sue is yourself. Thanks for diving deep with us. We will see you next time.